Awesome. Thank you, Arlen. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you to everybody putting their name in just so I know who's here, and go ahead and continue to do that. And as he said, as we go along, feel free to put questions on as we go, and I'll see what I can get to towards the end. So today's topic is, as he said, adjust your focus to increase your fulfillment. So it's definitely what I'm talking about today, the idea of fulfillment. And fulfillment a lot of times gets interchanged with the word happiness. Happiness is a different word. They just have a different connotation sometimes. To me, happiness looks a little bit differently than fulfillment. I have the best example I can give you is my wife's dog, Buddy. He's a little miniature golden doodle, and he is the happiest little dog you've ever known. But I've always said that's partly because he's just not very smart and he doesn't know any better. And I think that sometimes whenever we are busy in our careers, we look at people that are overly positive and overly happy and just say, well, if that was me, if they had my responsibilities and they had my problems, they wouldn't be that happy. And occasionally that can be true, but I think that if we struggle with ideas like that, we need to look differently and change our focus. Sometimes, and fulfillment looks different than happiness too. I know a lot of people that are really, really fulfilled, very, very, very driven people, but they don't look happy. They don't appear happy. We also know people that look very, very happy and they really aren't. And, so it can go both ways. But what we're talking about today is definitely fulfillment. And my goals on this, I got two main goals here. One, I want to help you understand that it is possible for you to change your mindset and change your focus. Sometimes it's the idea that we don't think we can, the old dog can't learn new trips, but I'm going to talk about that on how we can change our mindset, change our focus. And then the second part is I want you to be able to understand that your mindset and your focus, once you can change those, you can increase your fulfillment without changing your circumstance. So you can find a way to make your life better, regardless of having to change your circumstance. A little bit about me on the background, how I got to be a coach. This is a very, very long story that I often share when I do any public speaking. I do speak at schools. I work with individuals, and I tell my story a little bit more. But I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version here now, if that's still a thing, Cliff Notes. I am a husband. I'm a father. I've got a family. Both of my kids are in college. My son still plays a little basketball at the University of Illinois, Springfield, for those of you in the Springfield area. I spent years as a basketball coach, as well as a high school science teacher. And then I also was a administrator for a couple of years. I was in Illinois, and I was a administrator. I was a athletic director and a assistant principal. And you'll notice there that that's when the change really happened in the fall of 2020. And this is the part that I like to really share so you understand that where I came from. In the fall of 2020, in a 4-month span, in the middle of COVID, in the middle of taking care of the school, and you guys remember what it was like. In a 4-month span, I battled testicular cancer, and then a few months later, I had an ischemic stroke. And my ischemic stroke affected my ability to speak and read out loud correctly, and give me some struggles with numbers and things like that. So if you do catch me, you'll see me catching on words once in a while. I still have a little bit of that aphasia. Those of you that know what that is, some of you speech therapists, if you're out there, I still have to deal with that. The best way that I can explain my predicament is I went from I believe it was sometime in October, I did a evaluation of one of my teachers. And 2 months later, she was at my house helping me read second grade level books again to gain that ability to read again. So just a huge amount of humility that was heaped on me at one point in my life. Just a lot. Real, it was a lot, and I really struggled with some mental issues. I had a fair amount of anxiety and depression that I had to deal with. So much so that, after my stroke, I was back in the hospital dealing with an anxiety attack, PTSD, which I found out was fairly normal. And it was suggested that I go to therapy. And in doing that, I learned about positive psychology and the importance of controlling the controllables. And I started learning about coaching. And that's really what prompted me to go get my coaching certificate and learn to help others deal with some of the issues that I was having. Now, I would like to say it all prompted from the stroke and the cancer, but that really wasn't true. I was like any other educator, especially one during COVID. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and it was a tough time. So my anxiety and stress had started well before that. So I realized when I become a coach that I could really help people, and that was my goal. So I got to work. I got my ICF coaching certification, and that's what I do now. I'm a mental coach. I work with student athletes. I work with teachers, educators, some businesses as well. And I go around and I do speaking at schools and businesses. And that took a while because even my recovery took about, as they suggested, about 12 to 18 months. And in that's when I learned about the idea of neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, if you don't know what it is, it's the brain's ability to form and reorganize synaptic connections in response to learning, experience, or following injury. And the good news is you guys already know this, you're teachers. So the first two, especially learning and experience, I mean, that's your job, right? We know that putting kids, like teaching them things and expecting them to do homework and experience and get practice, that's how you learn things. But it goes beyond the reading, writing, arithmetic, the R's. It goes beyond that. Neuroplasticity can work on a person's mentality and the way they see the world. Now, obviously, neuroplasticity is easier for young people. It just is. We know that babies and toddlers and the younger kids, their brains are like sponges and they really, really soak things up fast. But that doesn't mean it's not possible for adults. And it took a stroke for me to really start to understand this, because again, my neuroplasticity was needed following an injury, and I worked on it, but some of it just took time. I couldn't do everything as fast as I wanted to. And when I started to learn about the neuroplasticity and I started to get my coaching certificate, I went ahead and got my business. And as I saw it on the first slide, my business is Mettle Coaching. And that was on purpose. I really thought about what I wanted it to do, what I wanted to call it. And being a teacher, I always love to teach people. And that might even be a new word. And I really liked the word mettle for a couple reasons. The definition of mettle really, really spoke to me, because it's a person's inability to cope with difficulties or to face a demanding situation in a spirited and resilient way. And to me, the word spirited there is extremely important. The word spirited means enthusiastic, as you might, enthusiastic means happy, right? It's that really happy look. And I like to link that definition to fulfillment, because fulfillment does not happen in a vacuum. You need adversity, you need challenges to make it worth it, right? Achieving some goal with no adversity isn't really achieving anything. So you have to find this way to forge your mettle, and that's one of my slogans I like to use: forge your mettle. Okay, so how can I not just face adversity, but do it with a smile? And that's the goal. So you might say, well, that's fine, but maybe I really struggle at that. Maybe you really struggle putting a positive spin on things, or feeling happy, or feeling fulfilled. So how do you do that? And that's what I want to work on. That's what I do with people, and that's what I want to talk about. The first bit of research, I'm a former science teacher, so I love research. I love doing more than just saying, oh, do these things. I love the why. This slide here is one that I use almost anytime I talk with somebody, and make sure that they understand this. And this is through a professor, Martin Seligman. Dr. Martin Seligman is the father of positive psychology. And he uses the word fulfillment, but he even acknowledges that most people call this happiness. He just likes the word fulfillment better for the reasons we talked about before. And his research over years has talked about how people become fulfilled, and the process that gets us there. And he noticed, the nature nurture debate is alive and well there. He noticed that about 50% of a person's fulfillment is based on their genetics. So if your parents were miserable, then you have more work to do. You just do. But then you also notice that circumstances and 10%, and whether that's good or bad, it's only 10% of your fulfillment. That means that, and they've done research on this as well. I didn't cite it here, but you could, hit the lottery, hit the big game, win millions, and it would only make about a 10% difference in your happiness level. Conversely, if you got in a car wreck and lost the use of your legs, they say it would only use about 10% difference on your happiness level in the other way. You really wouldn't make much difference. And when you think about it, that kind of makes sense. Like if you're focusing on circumstance, it means you're kind of waiting on luck to change your life. It's like, you're leaving Kroger and feeding $1 bills into the lotto ticket machine and just hoping things work out, right? That's really not a viable option. But if you notice, the 40% is intentional activity. And that word is so important, intentional. This is what is controllable on there. You can't do anything about your genetics. You can't do anything about circumstance, things that just happen to you and around you. But intentional activity is something you can do. And that's really something we're going to talk about here today, is that intentional activity and the controllables. So first survey question here I want you guys to do is, I want you to do two things. I got 3 questions here. They're short. I want you to answer some questions, or put your answers in the chat here, so I get some ideas of the answers. And then I also want you to make sure you write them down, because we're going to reference these answers. Okay. So take just a moment here. Your first question, let me see some answers coming in. What are some reasons for your current level of success in your current position? Fairly wide open question, but I'm assuming you've had some success. What has gotten you there? Thank you, Emily. And if you can only come up with one thing, just put it in there, but put a couple things down. Thank you, Maureen. Hard work, knowing someone who can help. I like that. Work ethic. That's a good one. Thank you, Holly. Being present every day. That's good. Working with adults and children. That's good. Planning. Thank you, Gwen. Organization. My work ethic. That's good, Jim. Thank you. And again, hopefully you've got a pad of paper that you can write and have this down, just so you know it. Colleagues, who you work with. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. Hard work. Desire to help others. Thank you, Denise. All right. So if you didn't get it yet, that's fine. You still want you to answer these questions. And let me go to the second question. So the one is kind of looking at the past, and now we're looking at the future a little bit. The second question I want you to answer: what do you need, or what do you need more of? What do you need to be more successful in your current position? Okay. What do you need? More experience. That's good. Thank you, Alexander. Time. I love that one. Time. It's a favorite one. That's a favorite one for teachers. A lot of people mentioning time, mentioning support. Yep. Okay. Support, time, and additional training. Yep, that's a pretty good summation of everybody's answer that I've seen so far. Thank you, Maureen. Okay, that's pretty good. Thank you. And the last question is just give me a percent here. I felt like that was the best way to answer this. How possible is it for you to reach your current professional goals in your current situation? Whatever your goals are. And I guess if you don't have goals, that's another conversation for another time, right? But how possible do you believe it is in your current situation to reach your goals? Some pretty high numbers. So somebody says I'm muted. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Matt, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay.
Let me see. I'll work with Amanda on that.
Pretty good numbers. You guys are pretty positive group. That's good. Everything 70 to 99. And I know, yeah, and thank you, Karen. I know it's very hard to put a number on. Very difficult to put that number on, but it gives us, it's starting a conversation. Is a question like this is really just starting a conversation and what you believe on where you are. Okay. So these questions are the start, as everybody's finishing up the questions here. These are the start of an intentional activity that we're going to do today. So this is, again, that 40%, that intentional activity, and that's what makes the difference in fulfillment. So this is the start of that. And we're going to have these answers, kind of set them aside, and we will go from there. Okay. And we'll use them later. All right. So focusing on the controllables is what we're, kind of this idea is it seems really simple, and possibly you've heard that people say things like focusing on the controllables or control the controllables. And it's a fairly common expression. Maybe you've heard it before. But I think it gets into that question that I said before. Okay, that's a great idea, but how? How do I do that? And we're definitely going to talk about that here in a minute. But first, what I really like to show, and again, as I said before, I was a former science teacher. I love the why. All right. And I love there's all sorts of, you can go on the internet and, you get on your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And there's a lot of information and a lot of positive psychology out there, and people giving things and quotes that you can really latch onto and use. But, to me, that never really stuck because I didn't know the why. And I'm like, okay, this is a great idea. Somebody's saying something, but I don't know that it's true. Right. So I always like to focus on a little research and a little stuff to back things up, so you understand where it comes from and how it can help. So we're going to talk about focusing on the controllables, and we're going to talk about the why first and then the how. So the first idea in psychology that I really want you to understand is an idea called the locus of control. The locus of control locus is kind of like the word location, and it's easy to remember then that it means where you place control over outcomes in your life. And there's two extremes, and I've got some athletes there that show these two extremes. On the left, you see this guy has a very confident and determined look. And that is to show that internal locus of control. The internal locus of control believes that what you do affects your life, and the reason you are where you are is because of things you've done. Okay. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I've got the guy there arguing with an official. And he is a great example of the external locus of control. That is when you believe that you are where you are due to other people and situations. Okay. Usually people live in the spectrum somewhere between. Nobody's completely internal on everything, and nobody's, few people, but people do tend to trend towards the external. But usually we live on the spectrum somewhere, and it usually is by situation. By some things we believe that we can do something, and other things that we don't. But yeah, so everybody lives somewhere on that spectrum. Why does that matter? Okay. And the research, the same guy who did the research, this Dr. Rotter, showed that if you have an external locus, it means that you believe that your failures and successes are outside of your control. You'll notice that your two questions that I asked, one was about your success, the past, and the future. And so like where you came from and where you want to be and how you can get there. So really started to focus on that. And we're going to talk about that. But if you have an external locus, you believe in luck. You believe you give up easily. You tend to be negative. There's less motivation to do things. And with less motivation usually comes less success. For people that have an external locus and exhibit a external locus over years, there's a connection between illness, stress, anger, and less success overall. And when you really start to think about this, about these sort of people, and you might be one of them, but when you talk about, and you don't even have to go with coworkers, you could go with individuals in your classroom, they become people that are hard to be coached. They aren't necessarily good teammates. They aren't good classmates. They aren't good coworkers. Okay. That is the external locus of control. The other side of the spectrum is the internal locus of control. In this, you believe that you are responsible for your own successes and failures. And they've done research to show that this leads to better academic achievement, better interpersonal relationships. So they're a better teammate, a better coworker, more likely to exercise, more likely to lead a healthy lifestyle, more interested in learning. So more interested in gaining different degrees, moving forward. And overall, over time, they've shown less health issues and less stress and depression. And when you really track both of these backwards, it really makes sense. On the internal locus of control, if you believe that your actions make a difference in your life, in the outcomes in your life, you're more likely to put effort into it. You're more likely to have more motivation, right? And you're going to have more motivation, more success. On the other side, conversely, if you don't believe that your actions make any difference, then again, it's back to that idea of you're just counting on luck. All right. And if we just, if you're counting on luck, then why bother? It's just either going to be what it is or not. And then I take that next step with this is there's an idea in something called self-efficacy. And if you're not a Ted Lasso fan, I'm sorry, but I am. I'm a huge fan. It hit me in a point in my life when I was recovering, and I started to see so much of what they do in what I was doing in the positive psychology in the show. And it seems like a simple word and kind of like really soft to say believe, but it makes a huge difference in what you believe, makes a huge difference. So the idea of self-efficacy is a person's belief and their ability to influence events that affect their lives is the foundation. The foundation. It's not that it's important, it's the foundation. Okay. And that's huge. It's the foundation of human motivation, performance, accomplishments, and emotional well-being. So it all really, it's what it's saying is our motivation, our accomplishments, and our emotional well-being all harken back to our ability to believe that we can do something. And that really goes back to our locus of control. If you believe that what you do matters, then you're going to have more motivation. So the two ideas really fit together. Okay. And now let's talk to those ideas about, or let's turn those into intentional activities. So we've got this idea of this locus of control and this idea of self-efficacy and how important those are. Let's turn those into intentional activities. So some of the things you got to remember in an intentional activity: one, understand that action can be taken. So that goes back to the idea of neuroplasticity, right? So taking action will matter. Okay. Recognize your current locus of control. We're going to talk about that here in a minute when we look at some of your answers. Recognize the perception of your self-efficacy. How much do you believe in yourself and your ability to do the things that you want to do? And finally, and then be able to analyze and adjust your focus. So let's have a look at your survey. So I want you to look at your answers. So we had two questions, one about the past, one about the future. The first question was, what are some reasons for your current level of success in your current position? And the second one was, what do you need to be more successful in your current position? I want you to give yourself a score, look at those two answers, and really examine where was your locus of control. When you talk about your successes, was it all things like hard work? If you said, I got here through hard work and persistence or something like that, I had several different answers like that. That feels like a very much a internal locus answer. But then when you look at, if you said coworkers, something about the situation or something about the district, those aren't really always in your control. If you say, well, if you happen to say, well, I'm only successful because I'm on a good team, and it's good to have a good team and you got to be part of the teamwork. But if you just say, hey, I'm only here and only successful because of my team, then you're not giving yourself any credit, and you may not be putting yourself into the situation and giving it the motivation that you should. Then look at the other one, looking forward. Thank you, Jim. What do you need to be more successful in your current position? Quite honestly, looking at the answers coming there, they were very much more the external locus. When you talk about time, when you talk about resources, perhaps you're talking about, nobody said it, but you might be complaining about the parents, the district, the kids that you have, the students. Those are all external locus answers. Okay. Those are things that you don't have any control over, but you're saying, I'm not able to be successful because of that. So if you would give yourself a score, you can combine them. I'm just kind of giving I just want an idea on where you think you score yourself, 1 to 5. Do you feel like you are very much an external locus type person or a very internal locus type person? And I know that that can be a little bit more personal to do that. But I think that as a coach, one of my main jobs is to get people to be honest. If you want to change anything, you really have to be honest and be a little bit more vulnerable. So take a few moments, look at your scores, and give me some answers. Thank you. And you can combine. So Jim here, you combined them. He did question 4, question 3, and that's fine. Or you can combine them. Thank you, Carolyn. That's good. Emily, agree 100%. Partnership isn't necessarily internal, but you're part of the effectiveness. Absolutely. That is true. It's just good to recognize those things. 4 and 4. Good, Denise. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, Nathan, Lindsay. Thank you. Okay. Amanda, thank you. Gwen, thank you. Alexander, Teresa, thank you. Some good answers here. I love it. They're most of them right in the range there. Just like I said, most of us exist on a spectrum. Holly broke them down. That's fantastic. Saying, hey, I got here because of a 5, but I'm looking forward. I'm looking at a 2, which is a good way to break it down. It's good to mention here that when I do this coaching stuff, there aren't right and wrong answers. A lot of so much of it is recognition. So I'm not judging you by your answers here. You shouldn't necessarily judging yourself by this, just saying, hey, this is where I am. He asked these questions and I just noticed that, I'm putting some internal, I'm putting my locus externally in some times that I shouldn't. Right. And that's all I want is just a little bit of recognition there. Okay. So hopefully everybody has a piece of paper, and in this piece of paper, I want us to use your answers And we're going to go a little bit deeper on the answers here than just the questions that I asked before. This is basically an exercise that I do with every client that I've ever worked with. It's one of the most useful exercises, coaching exercises that I've ever come across that I use. What I'd like you to do. Oh, gotcha, Amanda. Thank you. We're going to look at a daily situation when you go to work. And we're going to take all of the factors that can affect your day and your ability to be successful teaching on a daily basis. Let's start with, I want you guys to start throwing me some uncontrollables. What are some uncontrollable situations? And I know that this is going to seem simple, but trust me, a lot of what I do here with exercises, it's not rocket science. It's just recognition and practice, just like most of what we do with our students, right? It's teaching them some things and then some practice, but I'm going to give you some tips on this. So beautiful. So here come in the uncontrollables. I love it, Karen. Student behavior and attention. So I'd like you to all be making your own here. So as the uncontrollables come in, make your own circle of control, and all of those uncontrollables go on the outside of the circle. School day scheduling, student attendance. Those are great examples of uncontrollables. There are so many. Keep them coming. Let's get as many as we can here. But money coming in or not coming in, we should say, is an uncontrollable. Technology breakdowns. Oh, yeah. Coworker mood and perspective, right? We cannot affect, you can a little bit. It's interesting. You can try to do stuff and work within a team, but it's really not completely up to you to improve everybody's mood, right? So very much so. Students being pulled out of, class. That's a good one. Yes, as a leadership coach. Very good. Yeah. Gwen, thank you. That's so much, right? Like, how much the impacts of their lives affect, how they are in school is huge, and we can't do anything about it. Let's see. I think that we would add student behavior and parents. Thank you, Lindsay, for adding parents in there, because we definitely can't control them. I'll add, we kind of said it, but I'll definitely say time, money. And if you notice, it was a whole lot of what we said about that second question. One thing that I really like to point out to people on uncontrollables, I'm typing here, pardon me. And that's past decisions. We can learn from our past decisions, but we can't change them. And I feel like that a lot of times we do that. You should definitely learn from them, but we can't do anything about it. We have to move forward. So many more uncontrollables that we can't control. Now let's start talking about some of the controllables. When you go to what affects your day and your ability to be successful, what are some of the controllables? Time management, our attitude. Yeah, so we can't control it. Thank you, Maureen. You can't control the time, but you can control time management, organization. My response is, Amanda, that's one of my favorites, because that entire list outside that says uncontrollables, no matter what we can put on the outside as uncontrollable, what we can write in the middle is my response to those uncontrollables, right? So it's not like I'm saying those things don't exist, because they do, right? Some kids are in bad situations, money gets tight, time is tough, right? It's not like we can't account. I'm not saying we shouldn't account for those, because we should. Those are part of it. But our response to all of that matters. Self-education. Thank you very much. That's a good one. I can control my yes or no. That's a boundaries thing, Denise, and that's very good. That's important. What am I doing? What am I not doing? If you are, and that's important. If you're saying yes to something, what are you saying no to, right? That kind of an idea on time management. So many good things there. Honestly, the one thing I like to do a takeaway from this exercise is the uncontrollables are always going to outweigh the controllables. Always. It's so much more. Oh, another uncontrollable that I forgot to say is luck. We mentioned that before, but luck is an uncontrollable, right? So that's one that we would definitely put on the outside. That's a great list of controllables. So what to do with this, right? So how do we go past the recognition, right? How do we go to just, what do we use this? And I couldn't help but using the little rhyme there and writing and saying, learn to focus your locus. Okay. I love the idea, and again, I told you, I'm a science teacher, but I love the idea of putting your controllables in this circle. And I envision that as looking at a microscope slide that, you get that circular vision. And if you get too much of a field of vision, or you're focusing on the right side or outside rather than the inside, it changes your focus, changes your decisions. Okay. So it's extremely important for you to focus your locus. Okay. Is constantly be figuring out what you want to do with your controllables. The first step is focusing, but then what's next? Okay. What are we going to focus on? If you start to focus on your controllables, what's next? And this slide is empty on purpose right here because it's you. Okay. One of the things about coaching is each person is different and each person is unique. And while this exercise is useful and using the circle of control is useful for anyone, what we decide to do with it is a different answer for every person. Maybe there's some part of your circle that you really want to focus on that somebody else may not be focusing on, right? So what I want you to write, the next question I want you to answer, and this is the one that's everybody should be a little bit different. I want you to be a little bit more specific. I want you to leave here today. Once you learn to focus. Now we talked about if you have self-efficacy, right? So the idea of self-efficacy is if you believe that you can change if you believe that your decisions make a difference, you're going to have more motivation, you're going to have more effort and what's really important, you're going to have better mental health. So what I want you to do is, what decision are you going to make? This is really the important part. What I want you to write down a little specific idea. Now that you know what you need to focus on, what's the next step? Okay. What's the next step? And that's what I want you to put in the question, in the answer right now. What's the next step? What are you going to focus on specifically? And what are you going to do with it? If you're talking about some of the answers up there, organization. So Maureen wrote organization. Well, what does that mean? All right. What's next for Maureen there? professional skill development. Gwen put that. That's definitely something you can control, but what are you going to do with it? All right. What's next? Self-education, prep. How do you, Alexander, how are you going to deal with your prep better? All right, Emily, let's see. I can choose to have a better day or worse day for myself and my students by how I react to outside variables. Emily, fantastic. You beat me to the punch on something I was going to come up with and say here in a minute that you guys already know this, but you exemplifying this behavior goes more than just you, right? So how you react to outside variables is you're teaching, the next generation how to deal with that. And that's, we know that mental health is an issue right now, but it doesn't happen there's no magic wand for that. It takes time and effort and being good examples on how to do that stuff. So yeah, Lindsay, I'm going to focus more on my attitude and how I react to things I cannot change. Yeah, it's funny, Lindsay, when you write it that way, it makes it, it's so simple to say it that way, but yet we don't. Like how, why would you ever focus on things you can't control, right? And can't change, but we do it. Show up earlier and lesson plan sooner. That's good, Alexander. Your time and time management is one of the few things that, you really do. Your schedule and your day, how you schedule that and organize that is huge. Take time to listen to others and share what we learn. That's a good one, Gwen. I like that. Talking to others and listening to others and helping others and all of that. Very good. Hopefully everybody's got a plan. I really want you to leave here with something. Let's see. So the circle of control is an exercise, and I put exercise in quotations on purpose. I've got other exercises on there, like a writing exercise, doing your piano exercises, or exercising. Okay, if we were having a conversation today and I was doing something not on mental health, but with physical health, and I was talking about something that would help you gain more flexibility, you would not expect to listen to this 1 hour presentation and be more flexible in one presentation. You might pick up some ideas on how you can do it, but the only way it's going to happen is if you continue to practice the exercise daily, right? That's it. It's no different with this mental health idea. I think that a lot of times people think it's something that you can't just listen to me for an hour. I'm not that good, right? I'm not going to give you an hour presentation and suddenly going to change the way you focus on your life, and suddenly you're going to be more fulfilled. It takes time, period, end of story. So this exercise, what I would say to do is, one, continually recognize your locus. The one thing I definitely gave you here today is recognition on the locus, recognition of where your thought processes are. If you allow yourself to pay attention, you'll notice when you're stepping into that external locus. Okay. So that's A, number one, recognition. Two, focus on the controllables. That's the circle of control. And then three is important. Share this idea with somebody and get accountability. Everybody knows that any workout exercise is going to be so much better if you have a partner. So having some sort of accountability partner makes a big difference. And then the fourth one, repeat. This circle of control idea is something you can do daily. All right. You can put this, with athletes, I take them and if they're a basketball player, a baseball player, whatever, we take and write their controllables, which usually end up being the same, something like attitude, effort, and we find their favorite sport and we write it on the ball. and we put it somewhere so they remember it. This is something you can do. Write it somewhere that you're going to remember it. You have to have these visuals. You have to have this accountability, and you have to have this repetition to make any difference on this whatsoever. It's a necessary part of it. So a couple key points just before we end here. One, understand that you can adjust your mindset. So the idea of neuroplasticity is possible. So if you feel right now that you're like, oh, I really struggle with this, okay, that's fine, but know that you can do something about it. It is possible. The second one, recognize that your locus of control affects your fulfillment. Where you put blame and where you put credit make a difference. It does. So start focusing on that. Focus on your controllables to increase your fulfillment. And the last two there, remember that it takes time. When I was told that it would take time for me to recover from my stroke, the numbers that they would give me was 12 to 18 months. Mine was through injury, but your neuroplasticity can be through practice and experience. It still takes the same thing, right? The goal isn't I'm suddenly going to be better tomorrow, but it is very, very feasible for you to be better about this stuff in a year, it's worth the effort. And as I mentioned before, be an example. You guys are educators, you're teachers. If you start showing these ideas and these practices, it's going to help the next generation, which is ultimately our goal. Last thing here, I've got questions. If you have comments, takeaways, whatever, throw questions at me. I've got a little QR code there that I do speaking. I do speaking for schools. So by all means, if you're interested in that, I do just a little bit of list of what I do there. I do student athlete coaching, adult coaching, educator coaching. I work on athletics and business teams, and I do the motivational speaking. I'm working on some online coaching courses and a podcast. Those are in the works right now. Holly with a question. Let's see. Can you give us an example of going through these steps? Teacher example or athlete or whichever personal one. I'm not sure what you mean by which steps, other than focusing on what you can control and figuring out what's next. I always like to tell people that if you can't make a big step, make a small step. So whatever the step is, wherever you're trying to get, just make sure it's a small one and stair step as you go. If I learn to do this, if I learn to focus on this, then I'll be able to do this. And that's something I haven't talked about on this circle of control. There is a circle of influence, and you guys have a big circle of influence. So that goes, beyond. You can't control what one of your students does, but you can influence it. So you have to be very careful about that. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there, Holly, about the steps. If you want to rephrase that, or anybody other. Okay, got it. What other questions do you have for me? Or any comments? I'll take
And if you'd like to speak on the microphone, all you have to do is raise your hand with the icon at the bottom toolbar, and I can enable your microphone. Otherwise, chat is always open, and Matt can see the chat, so we'll take any kind of questions you've got at this time.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. It's the simplest thing, but something that if we don't focus on it, I think it slips away from us. If we don't control we let our emotions get away from us, and then we're in trouble in our reactions. And I do just want to remind everybody that this is, I know it may seem like a little bit simple on what I'm doing, but I just can't emphasize enough that it's it has to become part of your daily process and daily part of your focus if you want to make a difference here. If you are looking for, if you're looking for a quick fix, this isn't it. I don't think they exist in mental health and fulfillment and happiness. I think that it takes time, a lot of time and effort. And I've got, also, this is just one tool that I have and one of those intentional activities, but finding different intentional activities to help increase your fulfillment. That's what you need to be searching for. Yep. Led the blame game, right? And that's, the blame game really turns into everybody. There's a lot of stuff when I work with teams and individuals, we talk a lot about our response to conflict. And once people feel like it's conflict, it really changes stuff. So this is getting to the root of a lot of that. If each individual is focusing on what they can control, it really helps. Thank you, Jim.
All right, well, I don't see any other questions or any hands raised. Matt, we want to thank you so much for being online with us and sharing these awesome strategies for increasing our mental mettle. Another terrific webinar. It has been recorded, and I'll be sending out the recording link as well as the ISB evaluation form tomorrow morning after that all gets processed. It's close enough to 4 o'clock, so if there are no other questions. Oh, Maureen, thank you for your comment there, Matt. I want to make sure you see that.
Oh, yep. Thank you, Maureen.
Excellent. You're free to type your thank yous into the public chat there for Matt with our last couple of minutes here, and I will stop the recording.